Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters here on France 24. Coming up, anger on the streets, celebrations in the courthouse as former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak is cleared over the killing of protesters during 2011's uprising. The World Food Programme says a shortage of funds means it's cutting aid to over 1 million Syrian refugees. And we head to Jerusalem, where tensions have been rising over the site that's sacred to Jews and Muslims. We start in Egypt, where the public prosecutor has appealed against a court's decision to drop charges against Hosni Mubarak over the killing of protesters during 2011's uprising. The ruling sparked angry protests in Cairo. The 86-year-old former president was originally sentenced to life in jail, then cleared in a retrial. He's serving a separate 3-year sentence for embezzling public funds.
The court declares the accused innocent.
Joy and relief for Hosni Mubarak and his supporters, as the former Egyptian president was acquitted of murder and corruption charges. On the bench, the 86-year-old remained motionless as the verdict was read. His 2 sons, also cleared of corruption, embraced each other. The Cairo court found that the former Egyptian leader was not responsible for the deaths of 846 protesters during the country's uprising in January 2011. A revolution that forced him out of power after 3 decades of rule. No respite yet for Hosni Mubarak. He's currently serving a 3-year prison term for a separate crime, embezzlement of public funds. He therefore heads back to the military hospital where he's currently detained. In Tahrir Square, the emblem of the resistance movement, opponents of Hosni Mubarak were in shock and disbelief.
Who killed these people in 2011? Are they saying nobody died? Who killed them?
This is the death penalty for the Egyptian revolution. The court has just killed the last hope of the revolution. If everyone in the former regime is found innocent, then who killed these people?
In June 2012, Hosni Mubarak was facing life in prison on the same charges. At the time, Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood were at the helm of power in Egypt. Morsi himself was chased out of power in a military coup in July 2013. He's currently facing the death penalty in prison. And the man who put him there is the country's current leader, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a military man just like Hosni Mubarak.
Now to a decision which affects the lives of over 1.5 million people. But the UN says it has no choice. This after its World Food Programme announced the suspension of humanitarian aid to Syrian refugees, saying it was forced to make this choice due to a lack of funds. This from France 24's Mary Schuster and Laurent Bercher.
They fled the country in haste, forced to leave everything behind. 3 years later, these Syrian refugees are still a long way from home. As winter slowly sets in, their survival more than ever depends on humanitarian aid.
These tents don't keep us warm at all. Even the heaters are useless. And as you can see, there's mud everywhere. I've been in Lebanon for a year, and I can only survive because of the UN vouchers. I have nothing else.
But even the vouchers may soon be gone, as the World Food Programme announced Monday the suspension of all assistance to Syrian refugees due to a lack of funds. France 24 spoke to World Food Programme's Elizabeth Bierce about the current situation.
In fact, we have appealed for funding for many months, and we also launched an urgent global appeal in October, warning of impending ration cuts. But funding is arriving too slowly, and this is the first time that WFP has been forced to suspend assistance to Syrian refugees.
The World Food Programme spokesperson also expressed concerns that this suspension of aid could have disastrous consequences, both on the lives of refugees and on the stability of the region. There are currently over 3 million Syrian refugees in the neighboring countries of Jordan, Iraq, Turkey and Lebanon, and an additional 6.5 million displaced inside Syria. To meet everyone's needs, the WFP will need to raise an estimated $353 million over the next 3 months.
Next to ongoing tensions in Jerusalem, where Israel's launched a major security crackdown in the wake of several deadly attacks by Palestinians. The spike in violence comes following this summer's Gaza war, and with the peace process more blocked than ever. Much of the acrimony has been centred on one site. To Jews, the most sacred part of their faith, represented by the Temple Mount, a compound standing on what's believed to be the site of two ancient Jewish temples. But to Muslims, the very same location is known as Haram al-Sharif, home to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. France 24's Jade Barker reports.
Sunrise in Jerusalem. These fundamentalist Jews have been lining up outside the Temple Mount since the crack of dawn.
Good to see lots of people here.
While the compound is considered the most sacred site in Judaism, Jews are not allowed to pray there. These men say their visiting rights have also been restricted.
They've tried to limit the amount of access to Jews, so we're saying, come on, let's try and go in.
After 2 hours of negotiations, they're finally given permission to go inside in groups of 10. They pass by the Wailing Wall, thought to be the last remaining part of the ancient temple built on the holy site. Once inside the Temple Mount, they're met by a police escort and greeted by shouts of the Islamic phrase, Allah Akbar. Muslims view the Jewish men's presence as a provocation. Amid this tense atmosphere, a woman goads them.
In a few years, you won't exist anymore.
But the men don't seem to think they're doing anything wrong.
We're just exercising our right to come to this place. Of course, they have rights too. We have to share this holy site.
Some defy the ban on praying.
Hey, don't pray. Look, he's praying.
Israeli police intervene.
If you do that one more time, I will kick you out of the compound. Do you understand? Continue your visit and then leave in peace.
This time they don't dare go any further than this. Tensions are running too high. The police ask them to leave. They agree, but insist on walking backwards as tradition demands. Visits like these are not the only way fundamentalist Jews are trying to extend their rights. This Franco-Israeli does so by choosing to live in a traditionally Muslim neighborhood in East Jerusalem.
This is one of the most dangerous areas of Jerusalem. This is where they unfortunately tend to throw stones at our cars.
He lives with his family in this gated compound.
There's cameras and guards 24/7.
His family is basically barricaded inside their home. So why do they insist on living here? Because of this view.
Having the view of the Temple Mount is worth all the gold in the world and all the danger that we face.
Cut off from their neighbors, they believe it's all worth it.
Today we're on a divine quest to reclaim our land after 2,000 years in exile, and it calls for taking risks and making sacrifices.
This man believes one day Jewish temples will replace all the Muslim sites in the old city of Jerusalem. It's a belief only shared by a minority of fundamentalists, but it's one that's growing and adding to already heightened tensions.
Well, lawmakers here in France have voted to recognise Palestine as a state. This largely symbolic move comes amid a push from the French government to revive the moribund peace process at the UN and via a proposed conference here in Paris. Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius says that if a final attempt at a negotiated settlement doesn't work, France will formally recognise the state of Palestine. We'll end now with a look at some of the other news making headlines in the region, including the death of a cultural icon, thousands of pro-independence protesters, and made-up soldiers in the ranks of the Iraqi army.
50,000 ghost soldiers, all receiving real paychecks of $600 a month. That's the latest scandal to rock the Iraqi army, revealed by the Prime Minister, who vowed to crack down on corruption.
I feel sad that we've been paying salaries to the names of fake soldiers at a time when we don't have enough money. We have soldiers fighting and being killed, while there are mock soldiers receiving salaries.
The men listed on the army payroll reportedly paid their officers a portion of their salaries and in return were not expected to show up for duty, further weakening the country's military force. Since taking office in September, Abadi has sacked dozens of military officials appointed under the 8-year rule of his predecessor, Nouri al-Maliki. Thousands attended an independence rally in the southern Yemeni port city of Aden, calling for the south to split from the north. South Yemen was independent from 1967 to 1990 when it merged with the north. The calls for renewed independence have gained momentum during the country's political turmoil, with Houthi rebels from the north taking control of the capital. Police fired bullets and tear gas to prevent the crowds from marching on government buildings. And saying goodbye to a cultural icon. The Lebanese singer, actress, and entertainer Saba died at the age of 87. Her glamorous style and willingness to challenge social conventions made almost as many headlines as her career, which spanned 7 decades and produced 3,000 songs and more than 90 movies. Thousands of mourners attended her funeral in Beirut to pay tribute and celebrate her legacy.
That is all we have time for on this edition of Middle East Matters. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us here on France 24.